So today's food for thought is essentially this, that the idea of fame is actually really interesting because a lot of the people, at least in my generation and perhaps in future generations, seem to maybe take on a trend that I'm just not aware of. But it's this idea that like fame is a intangible and yet tangible metric of personhood. And let me explain. So, a lot of the times, fame in the past has been equivocated with something else, such as talent, such as status, etc. Except nowadays, the idea of fame is about a self definition of who a person is. And you can see it a lot in the rhetoric of individuals today that are trying to become famous on platforms specifically like TikTok and Instagram, etc. But what I find really interesting about this is the concept here, because it's really circular logic in a certain capacity. Because these individuals are looking for the fame to define their own personhood while not realizing that that is exactly what they are doing. Because in all of these instances, they're looking for the fame just so that way they can be looked at. And a lot of the times, as I'm sure there's plenty of more well educated people in psychology would be able to tell us, any type of individual that might be engaging in those types of activities is looking for a definition of self external to their own ability to define it. And that in itself is just really scary in a certain capacity, but also socially a phenomenon and really interesting. Because when you have this new generation, new group of individuals that are existentially looking for this way of validation, but the means in which they're doing it is imposing a personality online, kind of creates this idea that there's a split there. And plenty of words exist to define that split, but none of them, I think, really quantify what it is. I'll give you a good example about identity. So the other day, I actually had my car broken into, and I got a lot of things stolen that were dealing with work and dealing with all these things. And I'm talking to my family, I'm talking to my friends, and they're all saying to me like, "Oh, that's terrible," blah 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 blah. And I'm not trying to justify the car robbery, right? But at a certain sense, a lot of these things that I had acquired, I was talking about them in a way in which they were like really attached to me. Like one thing that went with this robber, this criminal, I guess, is a Viennese bag, right? It was a backpack that I bought in Vienna out of necessity for traveling around the city because otherwise I was going to be rolling around things. So I purchased this bag and I got it just like a corner store, right? But because I had got this bag in Vienna and I had been taking it all across the planet really after that, it became like a part of my personhood almost, right? This physical material object that has nothing to do with me as Dane. But at the same time, it represented something about me. It represented where I've been, where I see myself going, etc., etc. And so I lost this bag to this criminal who actually stole it from me. It's like a person stealing a part of my personhood. And it took a moment of just like breathing and saying to myself, okay, at the end of the day, it's just a bag. And like everything else in the car is the same way. If a person today stripped away from you all these things that you personify as a bit of you, a bit of your person, you're still left with you at the end of the day. And I think so many people either don't hear that message or they hear it and they don't realize it, or they hear it and they don't care. But it's important for at least these ears that are going to be attached to this video at some point to hear this again, is that the only thing that will ever define you is you. I am a religious person. I think that, I don't know if it's clear on my channel, but I'm a religious person, right? And so for me, the only identity that ever matters is the one that is given to me by God. Like, period, end of story. But even if I was an atheist, an agnostic, etc., my personhood is only ever going to be defined by me, by my internal dialogue, by my thoughts, etc. And because I'm a Catholic, that idea of Imago Dei even translates to the fact that it's still God's imagery. But that's a totally separate subject, a totally separate subject. And also a fun fact, this guy, he robbed me of a bunch of things, and he didn't take a lot of stuff. But one thing that he took that really bugs me is he took my sack lunch. Like, why did you take my lunch? That I just don't get it. I don't get it. But back to the point. The point in hand here is just that when I'm watching this phenomenon of fame occur, I keep saying to myself that I hope deep down inside for all these individuals that I listen to their rhetoric a lot of the times online, off the camera, to other individuals, that they are realizing that who they are as a person is never going to be defined by all of these things that they're achieving, by all of these things that they're going to be monetizing, by all of these things that are going to become metrics in their life. Their personhood is going to be defined by what they decide they are as a person, who they are as a person, more specifically. Because sure, if one of those people decided to say to themselves that day, I am going to define myself specifically as a TikTok influencer that is actively pursuing fame, then that should be their personhood, not somebody who is arbitrarily pursuing fame so that way they can be seen to then get an identification. And then it's just the opposite way down the track. So coming out of this today, what I hope anybody would see is that you are the one that has to make that choice. No one else is ever going to be able to make it for you. You can even go out of your way to pay people to push you in the direction to make a good choice. But we're trying to make the right choice on our own at the end of the day. And so walk away saying, I am going to do not what's good and not maybe even what is just or fair, but what is right.